Good evening. Welcome to the February 6th meeting of the Goochland County Planning Commission meeting. Mrs. Parker, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Please stand for the pledge and invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Heavenly Father, please guide this commission to make the right decisions during our meeting this evening. Please watch over our families, friends, and our men and women in uniform that help make our freedom possible. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from January's meeting?
Yes.
We have a motion.
Approve the minutes for last meeting.
Mr. Duck, Mr. Myers. All those in favor?
Aye.
And Mr. Myers, you had a statement?
Fellow citizens,
Mr. Myers, the microphone. Thank you.
at our January 9th Planning Commission meeting, I overreacted to a citizen who was expressing his opinion during the presentation of an applicant. My conduct was completely unprofessional and unacceptable from one who represents an office in our great county. I am offering my sincere apology to the good citizens of Goochland County, the community development staff, our Board of Supervisors, and my fellow members of the Goochland County Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. We will now open the citizens' comment period. The citizens' comment period is for anything not on the agenda this evening. Please come forward. Seeing that there are none, we will close the citizens' comment period. Mrs. Parker.
There are no requests to defer additions, deletions, or changes to the order of the public hearings. Okay, our first item is in District 1, RZ 2020-00001, application by Gregory Blanchard requesting to rezone 3.346 acres from Business General, B1, to Agricultural General, A1, to construct a single-family dwelling on tax map number 2-5-0-B-1. The property is located at 5155 Shannon Hill Road. The comprehensive plan designates this area as Rural Enhancement Area.
Thank you, Mrs. Parker. Members of the Commission, Ms. Jackson, I'm Jamie Sherry. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development. Tonight's case before you is the applicant, Gregory Blanchard, is requesting to rezone a piece of property on Shannon Hill Road from B1 to A1. The property is located in the northwestern portion of the county. The property lies approximately a half a mile away from the intersection of the Interstate 64 and Shannon Hill Road. The comprehensive plan identifies the property as Rural Enhancement Area. The two brown pieces of property that are identified up there is County Line Baptist Church. The property is zoned B1, and it's highlighted in the green because it's kind of hard to see. And surrounding properties are A1 as well as RR. The rural residential area that is identified in the green is Fleming's Crossroad subdivision. The land use in the area, you have, for the most part, you have larger lot, single-family residentials. The lot directly next to it, this is also zoned A1. These are still remain B1. This piece of property was was actually rezoned from B1 to A1 back in the 1970s. The proposed rezoning tonight is in order to construct a single-family dwelling. The applicant has indicated that access to the property will be from Shannon Hill Road. Zoning requirements include for the B1 Business General Zoning District does not allow for any residential uses, which is why the request is before you this evening. Just a little history. The property is zoned B1 as all prominent areas that were located near the interstate. Back in 1969, they had envisioned this area for business, and so it's been always zoned B1. This request is expected to have little impact on the county's tax base, as the location of the parcel lends itself towards residential development. In January, on January 6th, there was a community meeting. In attendance was Board of Supervisor Mr. Spoonhauer, staff, and 7 citizens. Questions were related to where the location of the driveway and the drain field would be. And at the meeting, there was no opposition to this request. And that basically sums it up. I can answer any questions that you might have, and the applicant is also here.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now, would the applicant like to say anything?
I'm fine, Greg Blanchard, exactly what she said. Just a small contractor in Goochland, put up a few houses already, and do another.
All right. We're now going to open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward in support for this or in opposition, please come forward. State your name and address, please.
My name is James Myers. I live at 4964 Shannon Road, which is right down the road from where this is being. And I would rather have a residential house there as I would have any kind of commercial property there. I also own land on 250. I would rather see residential in that area totally versus any commercial in that area. So that's why I suggest that it be zone 4 residential. And that's about what I've got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing that there are none, we'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Mr. Myers, this is in your district.
It's a no-brainer. I move that we recommend this for approval to the Board of Supervisors.
So Mr. Myers and then Mr. Duke. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Our next item tonight is a countywide ordinance amendment. Consideration of a proposed amendment to Section 15-184B of the Goochland County zoning ordinance to increase the maximum building size in the residential office RO zoning district from 5,000 square feet to 7,500 square feet.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As Ms. Parker indicated, this is a countywide ordinance amendment regarding the building size in the RO district. Some of the background is the existing code, section 15-184B of the RO district has a maximum building size of 5,000 square feet. At the Board of Supervisors meeting at January 7th, the board did direct staff to go back and benchmark and look at building sizes for other districts similar to this in our surrounding jurisdictions. The existing RO district is intended to include suburban residential and professional office uses to provide a transition between residential and commercial areas. Limited commercial uses are allowed in this district, such as offices and museums, as well as single-family homes. And there's development standards for the commercial uses, which include screened parking areas, maximum building size, hours of operation, and no amplification systems. Office uses are allowed in a number of our districts, including the Neighborhood Business District, B1, B3, M1, and M2 districts. Those are more of what you would think of your typical large office buildings. The RO district is designed to be more of a transitional use, so you have the smaller scale office type uses, and is really sort of a buffer between a residential neighborhood and a more commercial area. This is hard to see, but you can see the red dots indicate where our other RO zoning is in the county. Generally, it's along the Route 6 corridor. This property is down generally in this area near 288. There's a cluster of RO zoning there. Several properties in the courthouse area as well are also zoned RO. Any change that's made to this ordinance would affect any of the properties that are currently zoned RO, as well as any future ones that are zoned RO. As the board requested, we did benchmark with other localities. Since the residential office district is somewhat unique, it's more of a transitional, we tried to compare it to the most similar office districts of our surrounding jurisdictions. However, a lot of them are true office districts and not really a transitional use. So you can see in the Goochland, there's a floor area ratio of 0.25, a height requirement of 35 feet. Either a wall or evergreen screen for parking. There's a limitation of hours of operation between 9 and 7, no outside display, and no public address systems. Albemarle did not have any building size. Fluvanna, Hanover, Henrico, Louisa, New Kenton, Powhatan did not have any building size. But again, those were more office districts, true office districts. The only one that was similar was Chesterfield County. They had actually a neighborhood office, which was very similar to Goochland's RO district. And their requirement was a 5,000 square foot building if located within 200 feet of a residential area, and 8,000 square feet for all other office uses. So we looked at why did we think that was in there? It had been in the ordinance since 1969 when that ordinance was adopted. I think the desire was to have the scale of the buildings compatible with the residential uses. So as we looked at Chesterfield allowing up to 8,000 square feet, some of the housing sizes in Goochland, we did feel it would be appropriate to increase the building size to 7,500. It is difficult to make an office use work at 5,000 square feet. This would allow for a little more flexibility within the district, but still maintain the character and the scale of an RO district. So the recommendation is to increase the building height from 5,000 to 7,500 square feet. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This 7,500 square feet, that's not just footprint, is it?
That-
That's total, that is total.
Total.
So it can be 2 stories, 3,750 square feet per floor, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
total square footage.
Any other questions for Mrs. Harn?
And the height requirement would apply, so the height requirement's 35 feet.
Mr. Duke?
If it's more than one unit, it's a total of 7,500, or each unit could?
Each building would be a maximum of 7,500 square feet. There's also a lot coverage ratio in the RO district, which is no more than 50%, so that's another way that it decreases the scale and amount of uses on the property, again, to make that transitional use.
All of these properties that have been zoned RO have been zoned RO for years?
Most of them, yeah. We have not had any new RO zonings in quite some time.
Okay.
On the intent of this to keep the reason they chose 5,000, which is before our time, to keep it in more of a residential scale, large house scale or something to that.
So it was put in the ordinance in 1969, so I'm not sure what their intent was, but that's what we're assuming the intent was. This was to manage the scale of a building,
Because
correct?
there's not many buildings on Road 6 from the Henrico County line through the courthouse, probably all the way to the other end, that are large buildings. They're mostly, in fact, most of them look like they were residences that were converted to office spaces, and they're probably in the 3,000 or 4,000 square foot range.
The only one I can think of, and one of the citizens did some research on the existing RO properties, the Goochland Powhatan Community Service Board, that's actually right at about 7,500 square feet. The reason why it was allowed is because it was 2 buildings connected by a breezeway, but that is probably the only one that's as large as that large.
Could you go back one slide to the other counties? All right, Chesterfield's 5,000 if it's within 200 square feet.
200
200
feet
feet.
of residential, which this property would be.
Okay.
But there's no,
Yes, sir.
Could you quickly review, how much land is required for each 7,500 square foot building?
Well, with your parking and your building, the lot coverage, which would be those two items, cannot exceed 50%. So we'd have to take a look at it. When we were looking at this entire project that's going to come up before you this evening, they could, I think their proposal is about 37,500 square feet. If there was no building size, they could probably build about 46,000 square feet. So it's compatible with what's being proposed this evening.
Okay, so if you only had a 5,000 square foot lot, you could put on a 3-story building with 2,500 square feet per floor, is that correct? 3 stories.
3 stories.
3-story.
It's 35 feet. You
Yeah.
could do, it'd be difficult to do a 3-story building at 35 feet, but I guess you possibly could.
Well, 35 feet, it would be about 10 feet per
Yeah.
floor, so it would come under 35 feet.
depends
Okay.
on the grade.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mrs. Harm? Thank you. We don't really have an applicant for this, so let's open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward? Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Cindy Pack, 417 Regina Lane, and I support this ordinance amendment, and I hope that you will consider recommending this to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. You're not used to me speaking for this short of a period.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Gentlemen, do we have any further discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move that we recommend it for approval.
Mr. Myers,
I'll second.
Mr. Duke, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mrs. Parker.
All right, our third item for tonight is in District 5, RZ 2002-00005A, application by JSC Family LLC and Medical Development Ventures LLC, requesting to amend proffered conditions from rezoning case RZ 2002-00005. The property is zoned residential office, RO, and consists of 8.056 acres. Proffer amendments include a conceptual plan, building elevations, and a natural vegetative buffer instead of a masonry wall along the rear property line. The property is located west of the intersection of Patterson Avenue and Creekmore Road on tax map number 63-1-0-174-0 and 63-29-0-A-1. The comprehensive plan designates this area as office, no retail. And Mr. Chairman, before action is taken on this item, please note revised proffers were submitted this afternoon, and the Planning Commission will have to motion and vote to waive the time limit.
Thank you, Ms. Parker.
So just for clarification, we need to vote on whether or not to approve the consideration of the proffers.
That's before you take action on it.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Tom Coleman, Principal Planner. As Ms. Parker said, this is an amendment of proffers application. This is located in the southeastern portion of the county. The subject property is recommended for office no retail in the comprehensive plan. There is a property that shares that to the east, and there is recommendations for residential use to the north and to the south, and to the west is the recreation open space associated with the country club. Now, looking at the zoning map, the subject property is zoned residential office, RO. There is residential zoning to the north and the south and to the east. And there's agricultural property to the west, again, associated with the country club. Looking at the aerial photo, you see that there is a substantial amount of residential development, or CREEKMORE Park to the north, and you see the golf course to the west, and the new development for the residential to the east. There was a community meeting in September to discuss the development of this site. At that time, the primary concerns from the community were the introducing a business zoning to this site and the proposed access to CREEKMORE Road. As I said, this is an application to amend proffers. The rezoning case was approved in 2002. There was a proposal on the western parcel. There's a PUD that was submitted for review for about 25,000 square feet of office. It was 5 buildings. That would have left room for about 2 additional buildings or 10,000 square feet on the other parcel. It did limit the uses to professional offices. It did have the parking in the rear adjacent to the neighborhood. There was a 25-foot buffer and a 7-foot masonry wall abutting CREEKMORE Park. And there was one entrance proposed on CREEKMORE Road and one on Patterson Avenue. And those are reflected, this was the conceptual plan that was approved as a part of the case in 2002. I'll just highlight that a couple of significant changes that we'll see, and direct your attention to the screen in the back. There was parking in the rear. They did have an access here, access on Patterson Avenue. And you can see at the time this was approved, they included the layout for CREEKMORE Park and for the proposed residential office development on the subject property. There has been some previously proposed development on this site and on adjacent sites. As I mentioned earlier, in 2008, there was a proposal on a portion of this site for 25,000 square feet of office space. It would have been 5 buildings. It did go through the POD review process, but the project was never completed, never started. In 2017, there was a proposal for a B1 zoning to construct a 2-story, 48,000 square foot self-storage facility and 2 office buildings. That was recommended for denial by the commission, and it was withdrawn prior to the board meeting. And to the parcel to the east across CREEKMORE Road, there was a proposal there for B2 zoning for retail development. The board denied that application, and it's currently being developed for multifamily residential use. There was a previous rezoning application on the subject property. In 2019, there was a request for the same acreage, the 8 acres, to rezone it from RO to B2. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of that application on a 3-2 vote. It was deferred at the December Board of Supervisors meeting. A number of attendees spoke in opposition to the consideration of a business zoning at this location. The board did direct the applicant and staff to amend the rezoning application in the RO district so that a request for office uses could be considered under the RO district. And out of that came this new application to an amendment of proffers application, which is before you this evening, and then the countywide zoning ordinance amendment that you saw earlier. If the proffer amendment and ZOA, the zoning ordinance amendment, are approved, the B2 zoning, which was deferred into the future, would be withdrawn. Now, getting into the request before you this evening, it is a request to amend proffers for the existing RO district. There is no business zoning associated with this request. The approval of the countywide zoning ordinance would be necessary for this property to develop as it's proposed with this application. And they are proposing 6 buildings ranging inside from 6,000 to 7,500 square feet, totaling about 37,500 square feet in total. They are proposing medical and office uses. They are proposing to limit the access from CREEKMORE Road to a route right out only access. They are proposing a series of buffers and featuring an 80-foot wide sort of tree safe natural vegetative area in the back and a series of other supplemental evergreen buffers. And they are moving the parking areas to the front and the sides of the buildings. And what I'll do, I'll sort of go over these, sort of direct your attention behind you and sort of highlight some of the items I just went over. And you'll see these again when I go over the properties in just a moment. But a sort of feature, probably one of the features is this 80-foot, and that's going to be a natural tree save area. There's a series of supplemental plantings that would be done. The change that we alluded to, they did increase this. This was previously shown as a 20-foot buffer. They've given some additional area here, and that was the change they've made for this evening. But there's a 20-foot easement, a 20-foot supplemental planting area here. There's a 10-foot supplemental planting area here, and then they've added a 20-foot supplemental planting area here to sort of buffer those lots and to buffer the stormwater management area. As I mentioned earlier, all the parking would now be in the front and to the sides. They have taken that access to Creekmore Road, and it is a right-out only access, and they're still featuring the one access point to Creekmore Road and the one access point to Patterson Avenue. And here are the architecturals that they've submitted with the application. Probably the primary feature would be their single-story buildings, ranging in size from 6,000 to 8,500 square feet, which could feature a variety of roofing treatments. Again, as I mentioned, this is an amendment of proffers application. They've essentially are proposing to delete the proffers that were approved in 2002 and bring forth some new proffers. The first two proffers primarily have to do with uses, and they were proposed in office uses in the past. The third one did limit them to one access onto Route 6. I did highlight that one in yellow. That was the requirement for a masonry wall, which they're deleting, and they're not carrying that forward with the current application. And the last one would require the property to be served by water and sewer. Now, as I move into the proffers that they have submitted, the first proffer, one of the other changes that they noted they did with the change to that supplemental buffer area, they did have to change the date of their conceptual plan, so that's one of the changes that is a part of the Planning Commission's consideration. With the first proffer, they're committing to the conceptual plan that just showed you, and the first proffer also would limit that Creekmore Road access to the right out only. The second proffer talks about that tree save area, that 80-foot tree save area, and commits that to being a natural to remaining in a natural vegetative state. The third proffer talks about the series of supplemental buffers. That would include, when I talked about the 10-foot buffer, that would be a single row of evergreen trees. For the 20-foot buffer, that would be a double row of evergreen trees. And it also requires that supplemental area adjacent to lot 35 and 36, and also that supplemental area adjacent to the stormwater management area. And then moving forward, the fourth proffer would commit them to having the parking areas in the front and side. The fifth one is a 50-foot front setback off Patterson Avenue. The sixth one would just regulate any utility or easements that traverse the buffer. The seventh one does limit the use to the site. They're limiting it to medical and professional offices, and the proffer does include their definition of medical offices and their definition of professional offices. And the last proffer would commit them to the architecturals that you saw earlier. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Coleman?
I got one question. On the plan, it shows two squares behind the little parking spaces backing up to the evergreen screening between the 7,500 and the 6,000 square foot and the 6,000 square foot building.
Mm-hmm.
Are they dumpster locations?
Yeah, these if I could direct your attention just to make sure behind you, these areas right here, that one and that one, those are the proposed dumpster locations.
Well, according to the zoning ordinance, 15184C, there cannot be any garbage or trash containers, exposed garbage or trash or outdoor storage of any portion of any outdoor space. can't have that. That's what
Well,
I'm getting at.
the dumpster enclosures, if they're required to be screened, they won't be out in the open, they would be screened.
That's not what it says. In any portion of any outdoor space. It was the intent that all trash be basically inside.
I mean,
Because I don't think the neighbors would want to hear a dumpster backing up, loading and unloading all hours of the day or night.
that's what the ordinance requires, they will be required to have it inside.
Okay. I just want to mark that on the plans.
So this is a conceptual plan, and there are possible that changes or tweaks could be made to the conceptual plan, and that sounds like it's a candidate.
I just didn't know how that affected their operation. Make sure they understand that, because it could affect their building plans.
Any other questions for Mr. Coleman? Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Satterwhite.
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, my name is Darvin Satterwhite, 3013 River Road West. I'm here on behalf of the applicants tonight. With regard to that proffer change that we had today, just a brief explanation. Some of the neighbors had asked my client to meet with them last night or yesterday, and out of that discussion, a request came as to whether or not we could make that buffer a little wider. That's in the area of lots 35 and 36. I'll show you in just a second what we had before, but that is the change. We've made it wider at the request of the neighbors to have a little better buffer area in there. So we haven't taken anything away. We've tried to add something at the request of one of the neighboring property owners. So that's the nature of the only change that we had there. So, Mr. Coleman has pretty much stolen my thunder. He's given you everything that's going on here. But it is important what he showed you on this particular RO zoning back in 2002. As you recall, when we were back here in November, we were asking for B2 zoning. Well, we're not tonight. We're simply trying to stay with the RO, assuming that the board moves forward with 7,500 square feet on the building size as the Planning Commission has recommended tonight. So we would have RO zoning. But the point I'm trying to make with regard to this, we still are submitting with our proffers something that is a superior plan to what this RO zoning POD was, I'll say approved loosely, or could have been approved back in 2002. It's much better. In fact, we've added things to our proffers that beef up what we showed to you back in November. And that's just what I wanted to show. So this is, and Mr. Coleman's already shown you this, and the point he's made is that the parking there is in the rear. It backs right up to CREEKMORE Park. Same, I think, slide we probably showed you back in November. Now, entrance is there. I want to make a point with that on this 2002 plan. That's full access. In other words, you could come in that road or you could come out of that road, either way. What we submitted to you back in November was the same thing. We had access there. It was full access in and out. What we're doing differently with the proffers that we're submitting to you tonight is that would only be a right exit only. And signage, and we've proffered the signage and so forth that would do that. And typically your roadways are somewhat narrower to make it obvious as that's what you're trying to accomplish with regard to a one-way traffic. So that is a big difference in that plan. It's a big difference with respect to what we showed you back in November and submitted to the board. That entrance is still roughly in that same location. We'll show you that in a minute. And again, we have a very different configuration, as we pointed out in the past, that is what we believe is much superior with regard to screening that gets rid of that parking in the rear. This is what Mr. Coleman just showed to you. The only thing I want to do differently, though, is to point out what has transpired since November when this came to you. because we have slightly larger buildings. We have 37,500. I think when we were before you before, we had 37,200, I think it was. So it's about 300 square foot difference in there. So the building layout's the same. That's the same. You've seen that before. It's the 10-foot extra buffer that we would have in the rear of those buildings. We still have this tree save buffer. Where the parking would have taken out those trees before, we still have them. That's nothing new, but it's an improvement over the 2002 plan. We still have the same setbacks in the front that we showed you back in November. This, however, is different. We were approached by the owners there at Lot 22 and indicated that they would like to see if we could do something with respect to buffering on that stormwater management area, or BMP there, for the water collection. So we've proffered the 20-foot strip there as well. So you'd have the 2 rows of evergreens planted 10 feet on center, 6 feet initial planting. So what you see in the green at the rear of those buildings, we would now have also there at that BMP, at the stormwater management area. So that red is something new that we've proffered in response to that neighboring property owner's request. Now, where that red line just came up is what we were talking about earlier. We did I'm not sure we had this at the Planning Commission. I know by the time we got to the board level, we had a 20-foot buffer there. So we kind of extended it over. But we've gone beyond that with this proffer that we've submitted and would ask for you to consider tonight, to have that area proffered as being a little wider. So that area. That is that arrow coming out of the entrance there onto Creekmore Road is the right out only. So that is significantly different with respect to anything that's been proffered in the past, either in 2002 or what was submitted to you back in November. So that's basically what we've done with the proffers, the conceptual plan, and the one that we have before you this evening is better, I think, or at least has additional proffers that the property owners have requested that we've put in place, different from what we had back in November. We had mentioned, and just a reminder, I won't take a lot of time on this, I promise, but this is that the comparison between the 2002 screening and the screening that we would have with the 80-foot tree buffer. Those red lines on the top drawing is basically the larger red lines there, the larger area where the trees are. That's your 80-foot tree buffer. The smaller columns of red would show that basic 10 to 20 feet that we've got in there. And the bottom is what you would have under the 2002 plan. That yellow is kind of, I just put the little yellow mark there to show kind of where that property line is, but it's not anything there, but just to mark it for you. And that's you would have a wall under the 2002 POD that was submitted, a 7-foot wall, but all those trees would come down. And we think with the elevations involved here and the maturity of those trees, that the tree buffer is a better buffer, the one that we're offering now, and moving our parking either between the buildings or to the front of the buildings, rather than taking out those trees with parking in the rear. So that's not new, but just as a reminder of what we were trying to achieve there. Tom has already gone over these with you. The only thing I've done differently is just mark the heights there that you can see. So we're right around, 23.4 to, I think the tallest I think that we have there is 28.6. But most of them are right around that 25, 26 foot top of the roof line. So again, that's in your proffers as well. There are those lines that we were looking at for each one. Now, we believe we have better screening than back in 2002. We have that 80-foot tree buffer. We've got the 20-foot screening on lot 35 and 36, which we've actually increased beyond 20 feet now. We've got the buffer of 20 feet there at the stormwater management, which gives superior screening. I don't think we would have had anything much to comparable to that back in 2002. The medical offices and professional offices are the only uses that are permitted under these proffers. No retail is permitted. The stormwater management basin, there isn't one in place now, and I think at some of our previous meetings, you've seen some of the natural flooding that is there. We think this is at least something that would be of some benefit to try to at least hold that and to allow a phased retention of that. We are in compliance with the comprehensive plan. We can see these areas here are basically for the business office uses, and we've got that, so we're in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Of course, if the zoning RO goes forward, we're under the same zoning as well. Now, there is a big difference, I think, or at least something to note with regard to the RO, and that's not proposed B2, but what we have is 25,000 square feet under the existing, right, under the 2002. If you add to that the 10,000 square feet that you could put, and Tom pointed this out, on the parcel closest to Creekmore, you would have 35,000 square feet. Now, what we're really doing is 37,500. So the difference is about a half a building. That's all we're really adding to what you would have had back in the approved 2002 plan. What is significantly different, though, is that right exit only. You've got that. In November, you didn't have it. The Planning Commission did vote for approval on the B2 at that time. We're going RO, puts us even more in conformity with the area. We're not changing that. We're consistent with the comp plan. I know you recommended approval back then. It was a 3-2 vote. We think we've got a better product before you tonight, and under a zoning district that is not changing. So we would ask for your favorable consideration in recommending this to the board. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Satterwhite?
I do. Just to be clear, the only entrance to the development will be the central access to the development on Patterson Road?
Yes, sir. The entrance and then the exit would be a right-out only exit on Creekmore.
Can they also exit from the central access as well to the right only?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so you'll have two ways to get out?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Exactly.
But nobody's going to come down Creekmore and make a hard left to get into the development?
No, sir.
Got it.
No. Yeah, that Creekmore, that is a significant difference. Creekmore is just the right-out exit. And then yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
And in furtherance of Bert's question, the road there is basically a single-lane road. It's not designed for
Ingress, egress.
two-way traffic.
I'm sorry.
Going out to Creedmoor Road.
Yeah, it will be, I'm not saying you couldn't fit two cars in there, but it wouldn't be practical to do so, so we were going to narrow that. Before we had 2 lanes, coming in and out. So we would narrow it so it would be more obvious that is for one-way traffic.
Okay. The other question is the BMP. Can you explain a little bit about how that's going to improve the drainage situation and the flooding in the subdevelopment, or will it affect it at all?
I'd have to defer to Mr. before I get into too much trouble on that. I'm assuming it's better than nothing, but to explain it to you, I wouldn't be able to. If you could help me out on that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Wilkins with Town Site Engineering. We are not going to make anything worse. We are not going to improve their situation for what's going on with their drainage in their actual neighborhood, but we're going to mitigate our impact, and we will not make anything worse.
So it doesn't help the existing situation. Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Satterwhite? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We will now open the public hearing. Please come forward, state your name and address. And you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Louise Gervin, and I live at 416 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park. First, I want to thank the county for working with the surrounding communities to keep RO zoning for this parcel of land. It represents a cooperative spirit that makes me proud to be a resident of Goochland County. However, regarding this plan, I continue to have concerns, primarily with one aspect of the conceptual plan, okay, which is, I don't have the, it's that road, the access road that comes out onto Creekmore Road. This egress road, which it now is, exit traffic from the development onto Creekmore Road in order to exit onto Route 6, adding to the choke point that already exists here. Per the county's ordinances, a choke point exists when 50 or more residents have only one egress from their neighborhood or from their properties. And this is our situation at this intersection. We have the 36 lots in Creekmore Park. You will have 18 in Creekmore Place, and then the 6 residents at the end of the road. You add that up, that's 60 residences. Even though the county and the developer have made concessions to lessen the burden this egress road presents for us, making it a right turn egress only, as they've discussed, and the developer told us last night that he would work with us to restrict the use of that access road during certain times of the day when we have problems with the rush hour. But more traffic added to this choke point and more eastbound traffic on Route 6 having to do U-turns to enter the development, because now you've taken away the ingress, and so they come down and they have to do a U-turn at that intersection in order to enter the property if they're coming from the west. Do you understand that? Okay. So more traffic added to this choke point, and the more eastbound traffic on Route 6 having to do U-turns to enter this property will become our new reality. It's undeniable that this part of the plan, even with the improvements offered, will add to the problems we face at this intersection, this choke point. More traffic on Creekmore Road and more U-turns that we have to deal with on, you know, we already have them on westbound traffic, so now we'll have them on eastbound traffic too. I urge the county and the developer to continue to work with our communities and VDOT to seek solutions to the problems we face at this intersection. The continued growth of West Creek, the new Oak Hill project, and this development will surely add to the problems at this intersection. Please help us via collaboration with VDOT to make this intersection safer, not just continue to approve developments that add to the problem. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Richard Dare, 305 Victoria Way, Richmond, Virginia. And I'm here to discuss the problems with the entrance and exit coming out of the development, all right? I have a proposed modification to the Creekmore plan because I don't see how we're going to be able to get out of the development in any reasonable fashion once this is built up. I'm looking at 60 vehicles per hour that are going to be, that's a car a minute is going to be at that intersection when this is one little intersection, one little Creekmore and Patterson. Every minute a car is going to appear at that intersection. If it backs up, if it can't go across Creekmore Road, I'm sorry, across Patterson, it's just going to keep backing up and backing up. the limit to the right-hand turn only. I just don't understand how that can help us that much. In fact, it hurts us, because anyone who would be coming from the development that entered the complex would have to come out, couldn't make a left-hand turn back into development, would have to go across Creekmore or across Patterson, go down Patterson, make a U-turn, and come back again to get back into the development. It doesn't make any sense to me. The traffic on Patterson Avenue, 55. Most people are doing 60, 65 miles an hour while they're passing there. The opportunity for accidents are just innumerable. I don't care whether they're building the Taj Mahal, how much lipsticks they want to put on a pig. It still cannot work for our development unless there's another option. Another option, in my sense, would be to allow another crossover, where that entrance that's going into the development or into that complex right now, allow them to go across Patterson Avenue, and that would be the entrance and the exit for those people, allowing the 200+ people that access from our development to cross Patterson Avenue safely. That's it. If you have any questions for me, please ask, because I mean, if you go there, if you sit on Patterson Avenue and Creekmore Road, you will see the issues. Adding this much traffic coming out is going to do nothing else but cause accidents and kill us. I think this is the last thing that needs to be corrected to make this a viable project. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Lisa Hand. I live at 304 Victoria Way, which is on the conceptual plan. My property is lot 35. I would like to address the commission tonight to talk about the substantially less amount of buffer that my property is receiving, and want to note that I am appreciative of the 20-foot enhanced screening, and also appreciative of the effort by the developer to add additional screening prior to tonight's meeting. When I look at the 2002 plan, the plan called for a 25-foot buffer.
Sorry.
It called for a 25-foot buffer and for a wall. There's going to be many of my neighbors who probably think that the wall was not ever a great idea. However, I can say that if this access road, although it may be right exit only, if it is approved, then I would prefer the wall behind my property. I'm going to ask that the developer consider, if this access, right exit only access road is approved, that there be some type of barrier that is constructed at that exit. My vision would be something that was sort of a curved wall, a curved brick wall that would align the curve of the road. If you're looking at the conceptual plan, the road exits the office park and comes to Creekmore Road. I see them at many developments, whether that be residential or office. It is actually something that is added to the property. It adds the aesthetics of the property, and it would also at the same time provide a buffer for the number of cars that will be exiting that property, that will be stopping at that spot, and I will hear that and see that from my property. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Bunny Fernall, 404 Regina Lane. I too am concerned about the traffic. When we had our first meeting with the developer at the firehouse, we said, why can't you have the entrance in the middle like it is up there and go across Patterson? You can go either right or left without bothering our road. Oh, no, you can't do that. Well, if they can do all this other type of things, they can certainly do something about the traffic entering their property and not endanger our neighborhood and our lives trying to satisfy the developer and the owners. So I do pray that you will consider this road entering on to Creekmore. Thank you.
Cindy Peck, 417 Regina Lane. Proffers are intended to mitigate the effects of new development and projects. In looking at these proffer changes, like my neighbor, I'm a fan of the wall. The wall is, you know, it's in our homeowner's manual and things, but I recognize that it's a difficult thing to build. But my main concern is the access on Creekmore Road. And so even though I like the wall, you know, I would be fine with letting it go and go for a vegetative buffer. But the Creekmore Road access concerns me quite a bit. It's intrusive. I mean, if you see the homes, it's very intrusive, not only to the homes right there where, I mean, it's right in the backyard, but for the entire neighborhood and community. I realize this is a conceptual plan, and as Mr. Coleman stated, it's conceptual and subject to change. As we've discussed before, there's nothing final that gives that access, but as far as this project goes, and I do appreciate the developer trying to work with the neighborhood, and we're trying to work with the developer as well. You know, we're doing things we don't really love, but we want to work together. But the access, that Creekmore access is a big problem. So I hope you'll consider that when you're looking at the proffer amendments and conceptual plan. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Larry Gervin, and I live in 416 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park. I too, like my wife, she was up here ahead of me, but want to thank the county for the work they've done to allow this project to be considered under RO zoning. I, like the other members of my community, really believe that zoning request or the zoning type gives us best protection to the property value we have in Creekmore Park. I would next like to comment on a meeting that took place that you've heard about yesterday. I was one of the participants. We met with the developer, and I was pleased that his first comment was, "I would like to know your concerns." And you've already heard about the concerns that were likely expressed. The road coming out of the project onto Creekmore Road. Two issues there. You've already heard about the screening issue and the fact that we're dumping more traffic onto Creekmore Road. It's real clear to me that the intersection of Creekmore Road and Route 6 has serious safety concerns between the hours of 4:30 and 6:30. Rush hour traffic Monday through Friday. I cringe every time I try to make a left turn out of there. So dumping more cars onto Creekmore Road facing the same issue that I face is not attractive. It's just exacerbated the problem. I want to share with you how the developer responded to our concerns, because that was encouraging to me. First of all, you've seen that he's offered some additional screening in lots 35 and 36. Don't know how adequate that is going to be to properly screen those properties, but they're the ones that are most in danger of being impinged upon. He also offered to put up a sign that said, "No exiting out of this access road between hours that we would select, rush hour hours," which I typically believe is between about 4:30 and 6:30. It's very difficult and dangerous. And he's also agreed to partner with our neighborhood, the members of our neighborhood, to address the current issues at this intersection. Because if nothing is done, it's very predictable what the situation is going to continue to be. More accidents. We've already had several. And we know that Creekmore Park is going to develop more. We know that the Oak Hill development is going to put more traffic here. There's just too many complications in trying to maneuver that intersection during rush hour traffic. So what I would like to do in closing is to invite the county to join us. The real situation from a safety standpoint where somebody is going to likely get really seriously injured is to develop a solution at that intersection. So I would ask the county, we are going to be trying to work with the appropriate people to get the attention of VDOT to that intersection. It's going to get worse, not better. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
I'm Larry Lane. I live at 409 Regina Lane. And I also would like to compliment the county staff and the developer. Hats off to the keeping it a RO. That does help preserve our property values. I would like to also express a concern that intersection is a safety issue. One of the VDOT reports or emails talked about there were only 2 crashes in the last year. My daughter and son were in one of those crashes trying to come out at rush hour and make a left to go over to the mall. Fortunately, there were no injuries. It did do about $4,800 worth of damage to my daughter's vehicle. So the issue is, it's obvious to all of you. So there's going to be 250 parking spots for folks in this development. And I support the development. It's come a long way. The main objection is the access and what it's going to do to this choke point. So I don't know how many employees when they get built out, but if there's 250 parking lots, I would imagine it's 60 or 70 employees. So I can't imagine what it's going to look like when they also get off. So the developer has done a great job. He said he would limit access out that right turn at 4:30 to 6:30. I would love to see it, if it was me, to have the entrances and exits off of Patterson. That would solve the whole problem, because if put yourself in the lot owners of 35 and 36, that's ground zero for them, and they bought that beautiful property that overlooks 8 acres of 100 and 150-year-old oaks in there and hardwoods, and that's what they were expected to see. Yes, it was zone RO, but they, in their wildest dreams, never would have thought of getting a road coming right to their backyard. So again, we've come a long way. We're very close. I would like to reiterate what the last gentleman said, that we would like the community to partner, the county to partner with VDOT, and let's solve the issue overall. Thank you.
Hi, Wes Satia, 422 Regina Lane. I'm actually the lot, I think it's 24. Archibald's is on your map. Since November, I think the county, the developer, and our communities have worked closely with one another to try to make this all work out. Plans before us were not appropriate for that piece of property. Increasing the building size to 7,500 was not going to really affect. I mean, I could drive you by 7,500-foot buildings and you wouldn't know they're 7,500 buildings. They've kept it 6,000, so they've kept their word to what they were planning to do. The biggest concern, and I agree with my neighbors, is that that exit out onto Creekmore Road. However, VDOT has rendered their decision or test or whatever conclusions they came up with. And unfortunately, VDOT moves at a pace that's not as fast as most of us. They're on a reactionary. If something bad happens multiple times, then VDOT will take care of it. But unfortunately, that's not how we want to work and how we want to operate. And as we talked about it last night at our meeting with the developer, and he was in agreement that he and everybody, and that includes the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors in Goochland County, is hopefully we can come to agreement to work together to work with VDOT to make that intersection better. Because West Creek is growing, 288 is a fiasco waiting to happen. And that intersection is going to continue to be a dangerous intersection. And as a realtor, I drive sometimes 200, 250 miles a day. I've seen intersections that are far worse than that, but that doesn't give that the validity to make that an exit only or an entrance onto Creekmore Road with what we have right now. So I'd like to see the plan go through. I don't want to see a wall 25 feet from my back patio. I think the wall was a farce, and it was a gimmick to get people to buy into the neighborhood, and we were one of them. But when you see other options 15, 20 years later, this is what you get. Not a storage facility, but you get an RO and a county that went above and beyond and went and changed, looking to change the ordinance since 1969. I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing if there are none, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Gentlemen, any questions for the applicant or staff?
I have one for staff, I guess.
Okay.
I think it was Mrs. Gervin said that if there are more than 50 homes to one choke point, that it would not be allowed, and she says there are right many more than that coming out there. Is this considered a choke point?
With there is a regulation about having 45 units on a road. This project has 2 points of access.
Okay.
So so in that sense, that's not contributing to the choke point.
Okay. If it weren't for that, that would be considered a.
If the only access were to Creekmore Road, and that was its only access, then that additional traffic. But that project has 2 points of access. So we're not saying it won't contribute to traffic. Obviously it will. But as far as the choke point is concerned, that property has 2 points of access. It has a second exit other than Creekmore Road.
Mr. Coleman, could you review whatever considerations, if any, were ever made about just having two access points from Patterson Avenue?
Yeah, the issue is that these two access points, they're not permitted, they're too close together for the access management. The word may, if this one was closed, there might be an opportunity to move it, but having two access points that close together is not an option.
Same thing with crossing the median that's dropping.
With the median break, correct.
So all ingress and egress onto Patterson Avenue through the entrance there would not be permitted by VDOT, is that correct?
I mean, they have the right in, right out, the two-way access, but a median break.
Go all the way to the other.
A median break would not be permitted.
Great.
Is the Creekmore Road exit a VDOT requirement?
No, it would not be a VDOT requirement.
So it could be eliminated?
Is it not an
It's not a VDOT requirement to have that second point of access.
Because there's a lot of development up and down Patterson that doesn't have a crossover. There's a lot of office spaces up and down Patterson Avenue that when you exit, you can only go right or left. They can't, doesn't have a crossover, so you can go both ways. And if you eliminated that, then this would not be any different than, you know, not having a crossover.
Correct.
Because of emergency vehicles, is it required to have that second access point?
I mean, it's really related to the amount of traffic that's generated. I mean, obviously this is a new development that's going to be generating, but it's not going to have a requirement for an extra requirement for emergency vehicles. You know, part of this plan, we don't have like an emergency access, a separate one. It would be handled by the road network that is shown here.
So that actually could be eliminated.
I would say that that's not required by the VDOT or the county. Right.
Just to comment on that, I know that there are some developments that may have a road that's stubbed, but it's for emergency vehicle access only, but that wouldn't.
Correct, that we have seen that on certain projects.
Any other questions for Mr. Coleman?
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Would, Mr. Satterwhite, would you like to have anything to add?
The only thing that I would add is, you know, this, I mean, it's, I won't say rare, but it's probably becoming less and less frequent when you have something that goes through the process and you have opposition that ends up working with the developer and the developer with the opposition and so forth. And I say opposition simply in a loose way, but the neighbors. I think the neighbors have expressed concerns and we hear them. And I think because of that, we have a, working with the neighbors and the insights from the county staff, I think you have a better product before you tonight than came back in 2002 or even came to you back in November. I wish I could stand before you on all the projects and say, well, this one is absolutely perfect. And rarely that's the case. There's always something that you're trying to manage or you're trying to tweak. I think we have tweaked this one as well as we can. I like the neighbors. I wish we could have that crossover there at our entrance at Patterson. If you cut the one off there at eliminate that access onto Creekmore, then what we're going to do is send all that traffic up to River Road. I think this is a good compromise in that it at least has some spread going both ways. And I think it's a good compromise. Again, I'm not trying to stand before you tonight and say it's perfect, but I think it is a good project and it's better than anything that's been submitted to you. And I think it is a good land use project. And again, would ask for your favorable consideration.
Is this going to be phased project?
No, sir.
You can build all 6 buildings at one time?
Well, I say no, sir. As a practical matter, it may be, but we haven't determined that yet. I can't stand here and tell you tonight, no, it would take 10 years to do it or 3 buildings in so many years.
Well,
The market
It
may.
could be possible then if you're only building, let's say, 2 buildings every 4 years, that you don't put that CREEKMORE entrance in until you complete the project.
I expect it would go in at the beginning. That would be my expectation. I'm not telling you that it would have to, but a lot of that would be market driven. So I couldn't answer that.
What's the reason for that entrance?
Well, the difficulty is if we don't have the Creekmore entrance, then everything is dumped in on the River Road. You know, going up to River Road and having to turn back around, and we don't think that's good for us or for River Road.
Not all of it. I mean, only
not all of
that's
it.
heading back into Richmond.
I understand, but I'm saying at least this gives the alternative for a spread in both directions instead of eliminating that option and dumping everything to that River Road crossover, which would not be ideal either. I think this is a much better balance than going the other way. I think the fact that this is right exit only makes that even more the case on this one, as far as balancing out that traffic flow.
But you might be able to mitigate it by putting signs up to not exit there during rush hour.
It would. I think our resistance to, not to doing it, but to proffering it, it's awful hard to police that part, the timing of it. That's the difference. It's not hard to construct this in a way and have signage in a way to make it right out only, but if we had to be out there at a certain time of day, that would be a hard proffer for the county to enforce, or for us to make stick as well. It's more of a practical difficulty with that than anything else.
Thank you.
Well, I think you're trying to eliminate a problem that you don't know that exists yet, as far as traffic heading west and then making a U-turn down the River Road.
I'm kind of curious, how difficult is it now for residents coming out of CREEKMORE Road in the morning to make that left turn to head east on Patterson Avenue? How bad is the traffic right now?
The only, and again, I'm not belittling this. I understand what these people are saying, and I'm not trying to, cast aspersions on their truthfulness here. But I mean, the reality is that this particular intersection does not even merit under VDOT standards a no U-turn sign. I mean, we're not talking about a traffic light. I mean, that we've tried to get VDOT to put in a no U-turn sign, and they've studied it. And I think the staff reported this to you back in the fall when we had the case, that it simply does not merit it. Now, if it doesn't merit a U-turn sign, something is amiss there when we're talking about, tremendous safety issues. I don't understand that. I mean, I've got a dog in the fight. I represent this client. They've got a dog in the fight. They own the property. VDOT doesn't. I mean, they don't just make these things up. Well, yeah.
Based on whether a car has accurate turning space.
Well, it still doesn't merit it. That's the bottom line.
Any other questions for Mr. Satterwhite?
No, I probably should have answered that one, because he wasn't the right person to answer that one in the first place. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, Mr. Satterwhite.
No, it's perfect.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, do we have any further discussion?
So we have to accept these.
Well, I guess, yes. So before we vote, we need to vote on whether or not to accept the amended statement of proffers. First order of business. So who would like to make a motion to consider?
I'll make a motion, we accept the amended
I'll
proffers.
second that.
Yeah, for consideration, yes. Okay, so we have Mr. Rockacherly and Mr. Patuk second. All those in favor to consider the amended statement of proffers?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so on to the application. Do we have a motion? Any comments?
Well, I certainly think this is we worked on this plan for this particular piece of property for a couple of years. And I certainly think this is a much better plan, and with the additional proffers for the additional protection of the property values and the homes there is a much better deal. I'm still concerned about the CREEKMORE Road entrance. We're trying to solve a problem that we don't really know exists at this point. But I guess that's something that the homeowners and the developers and VDOT and the county planning staff can try to work out. So I'd like to make a motion, we approve this.
I second it.
So we have a motion by Mr. Rockacherly, second by Mr. Myers. Any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Recommendation for approval. Mrs. Parker.
We have no old business, but we do have one item of other business, which is establishment of a nominating committee. The nominating committee is a two-person committee which will nominate chairman and vice chairman for the April meeting, where the chairman and vice chairman will be officially elected. Once determined, Mr. Chairman, please state which commissioners have been appointed to the committee for the record.
And I think we have those. That will be Mr. Roger Charlie and myself.
Thank you.
All right, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.